A book that was published late last year has been pushed back into the public spotlight recently. It is mainly due to a news report that President Moon gave a book titled Here Come Those Born in the 90s to all his presidential office staffers as a gift. Regardless of the book, there has been much talk about the characteristics of the millennials, especially those born in the 90s. Raised watching their parent undergo two major financial crises, this generation has different views on office life. They don't trust sacrificing oneself for the sake of the company, but put emphasis on work-life balance. In their eyes, unproductive formalities and unwilling loyalties in the office are just a thing of the past. They are also different as consumers. Surviving in an era of high unemployment and limited income, they are frugal and practical. Rather than spending money on big, cumbersome, and dispensable items, they prefer spending on things that can bring them minor but obvious personal satisfaction. Watching this new generation of employees, many of their superiors, mostly Generation Xers, feel left out and out of date. In the older generation's minds, they still remember when they were thought of as young and brash. In less than 10 years, those born in the 21st century will start joining companies and emerge as new demographic of consumers. Possibly a new book will be published about this newer generation, and that generation will need to buy that book to better understand the younger generations to come. Millennials born in the 90s have shifted their belief that their personal time is more important than dedicating their whole life to work. So we're talking about millennials. So when we talk about generations, for example, I'm Generation X, and that's a very broadly defined generation from like the late 60s to the very, very early 80s. That's Generation X. But millennials were born after that. So traditionally we said Generation Y, but now we call them just millennials. And then, so for example, if you were born in the 90s, you'd be a younger millennial. And then I said their belief that their personal time is more important. Personal time is the time you have outside of work, like free time. Snowflakes prioritize their happiness over work. So snowflake or snowflakes is the slang term we use for millennials. So if you think about a snowflake, we learn in school that each snowflake is different. So as these young children grew up, their parents told them, oh, you're very special, you're unique, you can do anything, you're never wrong. And then once a snowflake faces heat, they melt. So in this case, if a snowflake faces conflict or adversity, they break down and start crying or start complaining. So, 20 years ago, if you're in Korea, your boss yells at you, you just have to say, okay, and take it. But now more people are complaining to HR or their other employees. So the same thing's happening in America. So this younger generation of millennials is seen as weaker. Therefore, the slang term now are called snowflakes. Millennials' spending habits are changing the consumer market. Millennials focus on their personal interests when they shop and are not jumping on the bandwagon of consumer trends. So I said millennials' spending habits are changing. All right, so spending habits. Spending habits are how you spend your money. So every day, if you buy coffee at one particular coffee shop, that's a spending habit. If you buy a certain type of cheese at the supermarket, that's a spending habit. But these are changing with millennials. So I said they are not jumping on the bandwagon. The bandwagon is it means that something that everybody is doing, even if it's good or bad. For example, if there's a current fashion trend that might be ugly, but everyone's doing it, everyone's jumping on the bandwagon. But now millennials are becoming more selective. They're like saying, wait a second, that sneaker is ugly. I'm not going to wear it, even though everyone else is wearing it. So they are not jumping on the bandwagon. Younger millennials are more selective when they shop. They want items that are affordable and bring them a sense of personal joy. So when we talk about things that bring you personal joy, it could be a lot of different things. For example, I look at ice cream that's not going to bring me personal joy because I know it's going to make me fat and I'm going to get a sugar high and I'm going to feel terrible afterwards. But another person might feel joy from that ice cream. So as millennials are becoming more selective, they're choosing what brings them happiness. I would love to buy, a brand new set of wireless earphones. That would bring me personal joy. It might not bring someone else personal joy. The more contact older people have with millennials, there is more conflict through miscommunication. Misunderstandings occur when older people who are set in their ways and try to connect with younger people and end up failing. So I said older people who are set in their ways. So when we talk about set in their ways, it means when a person's behavior has not and will not change. So if you have an older relative, uncle, aunt, grandparent, father, mother, they're at a certain point where they're not going to change their mind. So if someone's set in their ways, they're not going to change their language. They're not going to change their political beliefs. They're not going to change what they like or don't like. It's kind of impossible to change. So if someone is set in their ways, they cannot adapt and talk to the younger generation, and that will lead to conflict. Labeling each generation is standard practice around the world. However, we need to focus on what our strengths and weaknesses are so we can work together. So I said labeling each generation is standard practice around the world, meaning everyone does it. So, in Korea, people do it. In Africa, people do it. In Europe, people have always compared the older generation with younger generation, and most likely older generations always complain about younger generation. It's just standard practice. Generational conflict is inevitable. Defining us on when we are born can cause prejudice. We need to understand how we are different from one another so things can run smoothly. So I said generational conflict is inevitable. So forever, as long as people have been around, old people have, been upset with younger people and what they were doing. So it's inevitable, means it's going to always happen. Thanks, everybody, for downloading. You can follow me at MATTSSAM on Instagram. Also, please look for the link on Practicus for Pangea Consulting. Also, the book, The Konglish Killer, is on the ebook on all the major bookstores. And also check out my new podcast called Guerrilla English. It's on Podbang and soon to be uploaded to YouTube. Thanks for downloading. Bye-bye.